Terrific, thank you. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 11:03. I'd like to take attendance now and approve the minutes. So we'll start on the phone, for the people on the phone, and I'll call the names from the RSVP list that I have here. Dan Fuller.
Here.
Thank you, Dan. Spike Herzig. Catherine Nichols.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thurman Thomas. Oh,
Good morning.
hi,
Oh,
Thurman.
good morning, sir.
Okay.
Good.
Heather Bagshaw.
And Ally's on.
Oh.
Ally's Soretta.
Here.
Christian Hannafin. Ali Sirota.
Here.
Judy Hess. Sarah McGinnis.
Here.
Thank you. Lisa Burns. Dawn Borchert. Samantha Hayes.
Here.
Samantha.
Anybody else on the phone we didn't mention?
Tom Martinelli.
Hi, Tom.
Hi.
Sarah Emmert.
Hi, Sarah. Anybody else on the phone?
Phil from Finn is here.
Hi, Phil.
Okay, for those of you on the phone, just want to let you know that we're going to be putting you on mute to eliminate any background noise. And if you'd like to say anything, please press *6 to be unmuted. And once you're finished, press #6 to place your line on mute once again. And now we'll go around the table, starting to my right.
Patty Orns with Delta Airlines.
Hi, good morning. Shanique Costin with I Love New York.
Good morning, Greg Marshall with Visit Rochester in the Wine, Water, and Wonders program.
Good morning, Ralph Tregelli, Port Authority, New York, New Jersey.
Anna Packman, I Love New York.
Good morning, Natasha Caputo, Westchester County, Hudson Valley Tourism, and Chair of New York State Tourism Industry Association.
Good morning, Maura Manis, Council on the Arts.
Eleanor Tatum, member of TAC.
Lisa Soto with I Love New York. Heather McKellany with I Love New York. Kelly Garofalo Wilkins, I Love New York.
Helen Ames, Finn Partners.
Marty Wilson, I Love New York.
Rich Gagliano, I Love New York.
Ross Levi, I Love New York.
Imran Ansari, Discover Long Island.
Ronnie Weiss, Travel Unity.
Tracy Supa, BBG&G.
Josiah Brown, New York's Best Experiences, and also New York State Tourism Industry Association.
Christopher Goudon of Big Picture Tourism, here representing Wine, Water, and Wonders of New York State.
Okay, alrighty. Very good, welcome all. I'm Christine Nicholas, the chair, and everyone should have a copy of the minutes, those TAC members. Kelly has additional minutes if anybody needs. Are there any changes proposed? No changes. I will call a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Eleanor Tatum, a second.
Second may have to be on the phone, I think.
Yeah. On the phone. Yeah. So we have to do?
Yes.
Okay.
Who was that?
Ally.
Thank you, Allie.
Allie.
Yep,
Thanks, Ally. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any no's, let me know. All right, the motion carries, minutes approved. So now to the chairman's report for the, first off, the 2020 TAC meeting dates. Does everybody have a copy of them?
Yes, they are.
All right, so if anybody has any suggestions, we have taken into your feedback from the last meeting in September that we will not do it again during the United Nations General Assembly.
As far as we can tell.
As far as we can tell.
They don't lock in this far ahead of time.
Right.
Why were Wednesdays chosen instead of Mondays?
There was various different reasons. It wasn't, we just literally looked at availability in terms of trade shows, holidays, times Christine could make it, times I could make it, and it just turned out.
Why? Okay.
Production.
Okay. All right.
I mean, we can go back and take a
Yeah.
look and see.
Yeah.
We could also do it, is a Tuesday any better?
Much.
Okay, because we can do that too. There was just a number of Mondays that definitely didn't work. Okay, so we'll go back and take a look, actually.
Okay. Well, all right, very good. So we'll do that. So let's hold these for now.
Yep.
You can pencil them in, don't ink them in. Alrighty, thanks. So the governor's fall tourism announcements and activities. Got the slide open? Okay, you'll remember in our last meeting we spent some time reviewing all of the governor's tourism-related activities and announcements over the summer, and since the close of the summer, the governor has continued to support tourism with significant investments and events into the fall season. These include the opening of the first new concourse and gates at Delta Airlines new Terminal C as part of the ongoing $8 billion transformation of LaGuardia into a unified 21st century airport. The 7 new gates in Delta's concourse started serving passengers on November 4th. Additionally, the Port Authority Board of Directors approved the funding needed to build the LaGuardia Air Train. Construction on the $9.5 million renovation project at Saratoga Performing Arts Center to improve visitor services and add year-round event space. The plan includes community gathering space and upgraded concession areas and restrooms. Groundbreaking on the new Belmont Park Arena, the centerpiece of the $1.3 billion Belmont Park redevelopment. The governor was joined by the New York Islanders, NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman, local leaders, and hockey fans. The start of construction on the Buffalo Heritage Carousel project in Canalside. The project will consist of a new building near the corner of Prime and Perry Streets to house the nearly century-old DeAngelis Carousel. The completion of the Albany International Airport Transportation Corridor, the much-anticipated northbound Exit 3 flyover ramp, as well as the newly configured Exits 4 and 5 off the ramps, are now open to motorists and provide more direct access to local roads in the Northway. After a 50-year delay, the transportation corridor opened a year ahead of the original 2020 target date and under budget. $10 million for the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Centennial Park in Buffalo, completion of the $150 million road, transit, and economic development hub in the town of Woodbury, 5 years ahead of schedule. In addition to these announcements, the governor's office spent a significant amount of time working with the Division of Tourism to plan and promote tourism in the North Country with the first ever I Love New York Adirondack Oktoberfest. The event was held in Lake Placid on October 4th to promote the world-class destinations, attractions, and recreational opportunities in upstate New York. Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul welcomed more than 450 guests, including state and local officials and tourism industry leaders, for a day of outdoor activities that showcased the region. There were also several significant tourism announcements made. $240 million in funding to support order capital projects, including a base lodge at Mount Van Hoevenberg, a first-of-its-kind mountain coaster in Mount Van Hoevenberg, 4 new zip lines at the Olympic ski jumping complex, a new ADA-compliant gondola at the ski jumping complex, and designs for a modernized speed skating oval at the Olympic Center. A 2-year, $1 million I Love New York global digital campaign highlighting the Adirondacks and Lake Placid region as a high-performance outdoor recreation destination to athletes from around the world. The launch of the Empire State Trail Brewery's Passport, designed to promote craft beer, and the 750-mile Empire State Trail. The governor continues to show great support for the tourism industry and recognizes the investments that are needed to make our state a great place to live and visit. Now, before I move on, you got that one?
Yep.
Okay. I want to bring your attention to a collaborative piece that the I Love New York digital team worked on with our very own Thurman Thomas. You want to go to it now?
That's it.
This is just.
It's a blog piece.
Okay. All right. Well, in an effort to highlight the Buffalo Niagara region, the digital team thought it would be great to provide Thurman's Guide to Buffalo and Greater Niagara. The team interviewed Thurman on his favorite places and things to do in the area and created a blog, which Thurman then retweeted to all of his followers. So thank you, Thurman, for your time and your willingness to assist us in this great effort and your commitment to I Love New York website and I Love New York overall. Thurman, we really appreciate your support. I'll give you a chance, Thurman, if you want to talk a little bit more about it. He's got to unmute. Star 6.
You want me to start? Sure. Pound 5. Pound 5.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, it was great, and really had a fun time doing it. It's obviously one of the things that I really like about doing stuff like that is to get the word out about doing a lot of stuff in New York, period, and really here in the Buffalo area. My wife really helped me with it, and I'm here for you guys. I'm here to do anything I can to help New York. I live here and been living here now since 2007, and anything that I can do to help anybody, I'm willing to do. So it was a great time, and I've had a lot of people talk to me about it, about the article, and one of the things that I do get out of is that, wow, I didn't know Buffalo really or New York had all these type of places, and so it's been really well received, and happy to do it. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And Thurman, I just want to add our thanks because, in the social media world, being able to access somebody's followers is really valuable. And we know you have a lot of dedicated, loyal fans out there. So it was a really great opportunity. So thank you. Thank you again.
Oh, very welcome.
Thanks, Thurman. So now I'm going to turn to Ross so you can deliver the I Love New York report. Ross?
Excellent. Thank you. So we wanted to start letting you know about some of the industry activities. It seems like since our last meeting was a very busy time in terms of activities of the New York State tourism industry. Certainly a big piece of that was the meeting of the New York State Tourism Industry Association annual meeting and Excellence Awards. It was in Auburn, New York, which many of you know is where the Harriet Tubman National Park is and the Seward Home. It was at the end of September. Before the actual meeting got underway, the attendees had a chance to actually tour the Seward House. There was a great reception there. And also right next door is the New York State Equal Rights Heritage. You may have remembered we opened that about a year ago, maybe a little more, that it is a New York State kind of a welcome center right in downtown Auburn to show off New York State's heritage in equal rights, women's rights, abolition, LGBT, migrant workers, kind of the whole universe. This is the first time I actually got to see it in person. It was a very impressive structure. So it was great that the members in Esti and the attendees of the conference were able to experience that as well.
There's also the film Harriet. If anyone hasn't seen it yet, you should really try to because it actually culminates there. And it doesn't really talk too much of the history of New York, but they're all heading to, like it mentions New York. Canada got a lot of play, but New York here in the U.S. So I was very proud to be a New Yorker.
That's great. Yes, and because there's a lot of great attractions connected with that. Not only these in Auburn, but Niagara just opened its Underground Railroad Center. I want to say a year ago. It's actually in the Amtrak station, but it's a really impressive, small but a very impressive museum unto itself. And kind of the highlight is to look out the window at the bridge that people used to use to get to freedom in Canada. So it's very moving. It's great. And we have all kinds of Underground Railroad attractions. So yeah, it's an important time to be maximizing the attention being paid to that. So some of the business that took place at the NSTIA meeting, probably most important was at their board of directors, the election of their new officers, some of whom are here with us today. Natasha Caputo, who you heard from Westchester County Tourism and Film, was elected chair. Congratulations. Matt Mitchell from Corporate Communications, vice chair. Josiah, who we saw before, Josiah Brown, our good friend from New York, welcomes you, vice chair. Kelly Rapone from Genesee County Chamber of Commerce was elected treasurer. Ron Ofner, who many of you know from the Adirondack Regional Tourism Council, elected secretary. And Valerie Knobloch from Visitor Lakes Visitors Connection was the outgoing chair, which means she is now immediate past chair, which is an actual office. And so, Natasha and Josiah, I don't know if there's anything you want to say.
Well, I also wanted to say thank you because we're delighted that Ross and Christine have joined as ex officio for the New York State Tourism Industry Association. And if I may, we are a membership organization. We have over 230 members, inclusive, big and small, throughout the state of TPAs, DMOs, CVBs, attractions, and the goal and the mission is really to build a big organization, bigger than we are, with collaboration with I Love New York, sponsoring our events. In 2019, we've had the largest attending events. In 2020, please save the date, April 22nd through the 24th will be our conference, and it will be held at the Renaissance Westchester in Westchester County, so close by, very nearby. So please, I look forward to seeing you there, and thank you.
Great. Is there anything to add, or did your chair cover it? Great. It was a great meeting. In addition to the business and the socializing, this is also the chance for Nestia and the Tourism Ministry of New York to give recognition to great campaigns and people and activities throughout the year. I'm very proud to say that I Love New York was the recipient of the Niche Marketing Campaign Award for campaigns of $500,000 or more for our work around World Pride and our campaign, which we were very proud of. So it was very exciting. It was very exciting to get the recognition of our peers, possibly the most important recognition we could get. We also did our normal kind of annual report, letting them know what I Love New York is up to. I kind of see it as our shareholders report every year, because it is our stakeholders. And then I actually got fortunate enough with, thanks to Lisa Winters, one of the local TPAs or regional TPAs, to get to see to continue adding to my list of I Love New York must-see attractions that I've seen. I'm a little more than a third of the way through the 500 attraction list. But on this tour, got to go to Tioga Downs, the Mark Twain Study and Grave Site, which is quite inspirational to be standing where Mark Twain sat and wrote all his big stuff, like Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn. It wasn't written in Missouri; it was written in upstate New York, which is pretty cool. Got to go to the Harris Hill Soaring Center, and yes, I did go soaring in a glider. It was pretty spectacular. I got to go to Dr. Frank Constantin Wine Cellars, the Ganondagan State Historic Park, which is one of the really great Native American attractions in New York State. It's on the part of the Path Through History program, and they just opened in the last couple of years a brand new visitor center. It's really spectacular. Went to the Harriet Tubman National Park, the Museum of Science and Technology in downtown Syracuse, Landmark Theater in downtown Syracuse, which is one of these beautiful, old, ornate movie house, vaudeville house, and now does Broadway shows, on road shows, and also concerts and that kind of thing. Spectacularly beautiful theater. And also got to see some really interesting boutique lodging, some new, some has been there a while, in downtown Owego and Hammondsport. So that was just in a day and a half in addition to the Nestia meeting. So what I always tell folks is when they plan these meetings for me is the goal is lots of places, little time, not lots of time, little places, because I could always come back, but it's to get a sampling. So it was a great opportunity. We've also had the Travel Unity Summit happen in Syracuse, October 5 through 7. Ronnie Weiss, who is here, has put that together for a number of years. Last year was the first year it moved to upstate New York, out of New York. First time it's moved to central New York. I Love New York was an official sponsor and partner, as we have been for years past, because we believe very strongly in its work, which is to try to make a more diverse tourism industry. To talk about inclusion and diversity and how those issues interconnect with tourism and our travel work. The theme this year was Cultivating Welcoming Communities, a number of various sessions. Mark Lee Wilson from the I Love New York team was able to participate. I was off that week, so I couldn't go. But he was on a panel about how to cultivate welcoming destinations and discuss the programs and projects of the Division in Tourism, what we've implemented to make sure that New York State can be a more welcoming place for seniors, for accessibility travel, LGBT, and more like that. Ronnie or Mark Lee, I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
No, that's
great. Great, thank you. Well, congratulations, Ronnie, and thank you for that important work. We really do believe it as an important thing for our industry, so thank you. I was invited to speak to the Oneida County Annual Tourism Meeting. This was celebrating their 35th anniversary as an organization. That's pretty good. I think we sort of take for granted that the TPAs sort of are just there, but it takes a lot to run a TPA, and to be there for 35 years in Utica is a great thing. Kelly Blazowski, many of you know, heads that up and does a terrific job, and it was a great night. It was held at their very new Irish Cultural Center, and it's a great space in that I hear cultural center and I assume it's just a place where people go and have meetings, but what's the theme I'm getting more and more in tourism is multi-use, that you can never be just one thing. If you were just a meeting space, you'd probably have a problem surviving, and so they were very smart to put in this beautiful Irish pub that literally looks like the most ornate thing you ever saw out of the UK. And so that's open for guests, but also for their functions. And then they still have their great meeting rooms and things. And so we did our normal presentation about what the Division of Tourism does and how we can work together to strengthen tourism. And it was a great night. The Campground Owners Association of New York has its annual meeting this year at Rivers Casino in Schenectady on October 29th. I've gone in past years. This year, Sarah was able to go, and she participated in a panel about accessible tourism. She provided background on our accessible tourism program, including the market research that we've garnered so far and preliminary results on the best practices for providing an accessible visitor experience. Sarah, I don't know if you can unmute or if there's anything you want to add to that, but that was a great opportunity to meet with the campground owners, which is one of our key trade groups in the state. Sarah, anything you need to add?
No, that was good.
Okay, great. Thank you. Then NISTA, or NISTA, I guess, right? Yes, not to be confused with NISTIA, which is the New York State Tourism and Hospitality. The New York State Hospitality and Tourism Association had its annual meeting and award dinner at Turning Stone Resort and Casino in Verona on November 4th. I Love New York was asked to be an official partner of the event, and we were happy to do that as well. Heather McElhenney, who's here with us also today, she manned an industry table to meet with NISTA members during the day and discuss how they can get involved with the work that the division does. And Sarah was also there, provided welcome remarks on behalf of I Love New York at the awards dinner, because I think I was at WTM, I forget. But see, this is why it's good to have a team finally, because as much as we try to clone me, it just didn't work. And so it was another great opportunity to connect with our industry. So as you can see, a busy work. We take our industry relations exceptionally seriously. We realize this is the front line of New York State tourism, that we are only successful in achieving the results we've achieved because we have a strong working relationship with our partners. And so we think it's important to be out there and talking and hearing and being able to tailor our program as necessary to make sure we're all rowing in the same direction and getting great things done collectively. So we're thrilled to be able to do all that. So at this point, we want to move on and talk about some of the great public relations activities that have happened since our last meeting. Lisa Soto can do that.
Great. So, because it's fall, that means we are promoting winter in the PR world, keeping ourselves a season ahead. So, in order to capture the winter feel, we had our event at the ice rink at Chelsea Piers, which if you've never been to an event there, it is absolutely beautiful. The Sunset Terrace overlooks the Hudson River, and we had access to the ice skating rink, so really provided that winter feel for our event. We hosted it in partnership with SANY, the Ski Association of New York, and ORTA, the Olympic Regional Development Authority, which is a tradition that we've done over the past few years, and they bring in the various ski mountains as well as the ORTA facilities to talk to the media along with our TPAs that we bring in. Altogether, we had 11 ski areas, 8 TPAs. We also had New York State Parks, DEC, because they were able to talk about visiting parks during the winter and snowmobiling and snowshoeing and the different things that you could do in the parks all winter long. The New York State Snowmobile Association, and of course, our transportation partners at Metro North and Amtrak. We also had different events, so while it is primarily a reception to allow for networking with the travel media and the participants that are there, we also like to add a little bit more to the event to make it more enticing for the media to want to attend and just offer different things to do. So we had winter crafting where people made little tree ornaments to make little skis, and we had terrariums, little winter terrariums that people were able to build. The Maple Producers Association were there with maple candy and maple pretzels. The Wine and Grape Foundation, they had ice not ice wine. We wanted them to have ice wine. They weren't able to do it. Sparkling wine for New Year's tasting. And again, the maple producers and the Wine and Grape Foundation were able to just talk about what the different places to visit and things to do in the winter at their facilities. We also had activities on the ice that were programmed by ORTA, which was not only ice skating, but they brought down equipment for people to do curling and hockey shootouts, which was a lot of fun. That's not something you can necessarily do every day. So altogether, we had about 50 media, including some top-tier media from WCBS, CNBC, Today.com, Women's Health, Parrots.com, Travel and Leisure, and Every Day with Rachel Ray, and that's just a little sampling. So hopefully we will see some results from that event very soon. Next up was a press trip. Now, I usually don't often cover our press trips. Most of them are individual press trips, but we do tend to have about 2, 3, sometimes 4 group press trips per year. And I wanted to highlight this one in particular because it was a very successful press trip. And it came as a result, actually, of the NYSTIA conference, I believe it was, in Buffalo. Once I went to Buffalo, and you know, it's very different once you see a place and you experience it for yourself. So once I was there, I was like, you know what, we haven't had a group press trip to Buffalo in a while, and there's so much arts and culture there. And they just had so much going on, particularly with the renovation of the Darwin Martin House finally being completed. We thought it was a great opportunity. We partnered with NYSCA and Visit Buffalo Niagara, and we bought a group press trip up there. Some of the places that they visited included the Darwin Martin House, Albright Knox, the Colored Musicians Club. They did a hard hat tour of the Richardson Olmsted campus. They also saw downtown Buffalo and a theater performance in Silo City, and that's just like a brief summary of what we got so far. And Helen from Finn Partners is here, and she led the trip. Do you want to add anything to that?
So we brought 4 journalists, all from national top-tier publications, and it was each of their first time in Buffalo, and they seriously kept on saying, wow, I can't believe this. I never really thought about this in Buffalo. So we really opened their eyes, and just a month back from the trip, the stories kept rolling out. We had Architectural Digest, Family Traveler, hitting that family market that's so important to New York State, and we have a 3-page feature coming out in an online outlet called Road Trippers, all about the renaissance of the Richardson Olmsted campus and more. So it was a really great theme, arts and culture for Buffalo.
So last but not least, I wanted to proudly announce that we are the recipient of an HSMAI Public Relations Award. So HSMI is the Hospitality, Sales, and Marketing Association. We were the recipients of their Gold Award for the LGBT category for the work on the World Pride and Stonewall 50 campaign. So if anybody's not familiar, this is, I guess, kind of like the Emmys or the Oscars of the tourism and marketing world. And they recognize best practices in sales and marketing in the hospitality industry. And so now that we won the Gold Award, that means we are eligible to win the Platinum Award. So fingers crossed, with all the other people who won Gold Awards in different categories. And that will be at the dinner on January 21st. So part of I just wanted to quickly note, part of the campaign of why we won this award was our media lunch that we did for World Pride in January. We also did a press release, and we had extensive pitching on all of the events that took place supporting World Pride throughout the state, continually from January all the way up through June, especially as more events were added on. And of course, this award wasn't done in a silo. This was probably one of our best all-team efforts. And so while, thanks definitely goes to Finn Partners for doing all the pitching and getting the word out there, our in-house team, Ross, Sarah, Kelly, and everybody who really helped get the whole World Pride campaign together definitely share in this great award.
Great. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
So you've heard us talk, of course, about the I Love New York pod, and we've sort of teased you in our last meeting. But now that the summer tour is done, Shanique, who heads up our experiential marketing, is actually able to tell us about that and some other activities since we last met.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. So the Fall Sea is the culmination of what Ross just mentioned is our kind of largest experiential activation, the I Love New York Mobile Pod Tour. I think this is its 5th year running. This year was the continuation of the second mobile pod, so we have actual 2 touring pods on the road. We saw a lot of success from that in prior years, and so we definitely wanted to bring that back. This year we went to a total of 37 events. This is slightly down from 40 events last year. 22 in-state, 15 out-of-state, 19 were repeat events from prior years, and 18 were completely new events. Every year we look to enhance the experience of the pod, and a lot of it is to ultimately increase engagement. So not only getting folks to kind of stop at the pod and interact with it, but also drive folks a little further down the funnel, whether that be inciting conversation, and then having them, of course, kind of jump over to our digital platforms to learn more about I Love New York. So this year we added a fire pit conversation area. One of the kind of main avenues or metrics that we keep kind of pulse on is familiarity with the state and our attractions. And so we saw that dip over the last prior years, and so we wanted to kind of put together a kind of dedicated space where our BAs could have one-on-one or one-on small group conversations, and we saw a lot of success there. We also kind of did some digital modifications, including combining our GIF and selfie wall station. We had a kind of kid and family focused activity, as we see a lot of kids, of course families being our target, kind of walk through and want to interact in the pods. So we added a Mad Libs wall this year. We also included an additional literature display area. As you guys can imagine, collateral is always something that is of use and kind of sought out by the folks who stop at the pod, wanting more information than we can probably house in the pod itself. But we found an opportunity to include more literature in our spaces, and that allowed more of our partners to display as well. And then we upgraded some internet systems, which, while at the bottom of this list, actually is probably one of the more important things that happened, because as you can imagine, we have several digital kiosks and components throughout the pod, and that allows us to capture information, particularly leads from folks who are interested in hearing more about the pod from us. And so being able to upgrade our internet system mean that we could have kind of conversations that literally went out kind of in a timely manner and fashion, which could keep them in the funnel a lot longer. You can skip over this, Kel. And so in terms of results, in terms of emails and leads collection, we increased to nearly 35,000. That is up from nearly about a 12% increase from last year. We activated in 8 of the 11 vacation regions, and that is up from 7 from last year's tour. This metric around receiving new travel ideas and familiarity with the state, this was the metric I was mentioning before that our fire pit really helped kind of increase around. We upped that to 79% versus 74%, and these metrics are taking from a post-pod survey that we asked folks who have stopped by the pod. There's some other kind of metrics here. The last one I'll kind of mention is the 88% yes, likely to plan a trip and recommend trips throughout New York State versus 82%. So overall, a very successful tour, largely kind of the biggest experiential effort that we do in terms of I Love New York, and one we'll certainly keep building on in the future.
Great. Thank you, Shanique. You probably know our fall foliage digital campaign. Our fall foliage report is our most viewed, I believe, of the year. And so to report both on that, and that was just one of many digital activities we had supporting fall. Anna Packman, who heads up our digital team.
Thanks, Ross. So yeah, fall foliage is indeed the most popular destination on our website for the whole year. We have people going crazy over the leaf peeping, and we have dozens of leaf peepers all across the state that call in and provide reports in real time as to what the leaves look like every week. So it's a unique feature that we own that is exclusive to I Love New York. That a lot of people have really enjoyed. And we've also pushed that out on social media, encouraging people to use the New York Loves Fall hashtag, which 27,000 users have used in their own posts, showcasing their own travels across the state since we launched that last fall. Our top Instagram post this week was one of our top posts of all time. It got over 9,000 likes, which is a lot for our account. And one of the new things that we did this year was we launched a newsletter. So now instead of remembering to come to the website every Wednesday to get your report, we pushed it out to people's inboxes. So anyone who came to the site and signed up, we gave them the option of receiving a reminder that the foliage report was published. So we had over 8,000 signups just for the 7-week period. We also created some new formats for our social media, particularly Instagram. Instagram Stories is one of the most popular features that people are using on the platform, and we launched Fall Mad Libs. So we created this template with our agency workshop and had people fill in the blanks. So we had people submitting what they really loved about their fall trips, like this person here who went to see the most gorgeous fall hidden gem of Diamond Notch Falls with their wife Jen, and they loved it because it's secluded but easy to get to with stunning views. So that was just one of the ways that we engaged our audience throughout the season. And then another thing that I wanted to show was a video series that our agency workshop produced for us as well, showing some of the great things that you can do as a family during the fall season. So the concept of these videos was that you would show a family basically jumping #both feet in to a pile of leaves, but then ending up in one of the beautiful New York State destinations to encourage awareness and interest in those destinations. So if we could show that. Something that we ran across our social media accounts.
Great. Thank you, Anna. Oh, is there another one?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah. Thank you. And if there's any theme we keep hearing everywhere we go when it comes to the digital space, is content is king. That more and more it's about, what are you creating that's going to be of interest to people? And so Anna and her team are to be congratulated about always thinking about ways of engaging people further with all kinds of interesting content. So thank you.
Thanks, Ross.
Markley Wilson and I are just recently back, I guess a couple weeks. It feels shorter, from World Travel Mart in London. And so to talk about that, as well as some other international FAM tours and things going on, is Markley.
Well, as you know, the UK is the #1 source of international visitors to our state. And our participation in WTM this year was quite unique in that it was the best quality WTM I've ever experienced. What made it different was that normally when we attend WTM, we are selling, this is Poughkeepsie or this is Long Island, and we're trying to educate operators about what we have. This time, the majority of the meetings were about us helping those who are already offering New York State to sell it. So we were exploring ways in which we can collaborate with them to promote what existed, which was quite gratifying. We introduced at WTM NYC Plus, which is a promotion designed to capitalize on the popularity of New York City but entice those visiting the city for the second or third time to try a little bit of Long Island or the Hudson Valley or Buffalo, etc. And we are actually having a soft launch of this new program with tour operator Funway at the end of this week. We've received support for helping the promotion of this New York City Plus program from NYC and Company, as well as from Aer Lingus, and they're going to be collaborating with us very soon. This program is designed to support the existing products such as Wine, Water, and Wonders, NYC in 9 days, and beyond the Big Apple. These are programs that are already established, and this new promotion is going to help boost awareness and sales of those existing programs. At WTM, after it ended, we spent some time with our team in London discussing subjects as Brexit, the fact that Thomas Cook has crashed, the fact that there's no longer Norwegian Airlines service to Stewart Airport, and what we did last year and what we propose to do next year based on the changing trends. And that was really, really valuable time for us with our team there. Next. October was the busiest month for formalization tours from foreign countries. We had many, including a tour operator tour from the United Kingdom, which was sponsored by Norwegian Airlines, pushing their service to JFK. There was a German tour operator tour that highlighted the Wine, Water, and Wonders of New York State program, and this went to 5 regions of our state. There was a family formalization tour from the United Kingdom where they took the train to Poughkeepsie and then drove from there, ending up in Toronto. There was also a competition that lasted almost 9 months in Australia. The competition was designed to get them to sell New York State. Over 150 agents participated in that competition, and then the 8 winners were given this formalization tour of New York State, which was really well received. There was also a unique formalization tour from China, where we had 5 travel agents and a tour operator exploring New York State for their clients whose interest was 5-star hotels, not motor coaches. And we had a UK team also participating in the Buffalo Wings eating competition. There were also several individual farm tours throughout the state. So I really want to thank everyone from the TPAs, the hotels, and the attractions throughout the state for the support they're giving us all in offering people the opportunity to see what we have by hosting farm tours.
Yep. And yes, Mark Lee and Danae Jones, who many of you know on our staff, worked very hard. Poor Danae was there. Late nights, it was 4 or 5 fam trips back to back. It was a crazy month. So congratulations and thanks. Because we know there's no substitute for getting people out to actually see the state. It's our #1 priority, both in our PR and our international work. So we were excited to be able to do that. We want to talk a little about policy and program development. You're aware that we're always trying to be aware of new audiences to reach, new trends to capitalize on. You've heard us talk about our senior tourism initiative and our accessibility tourism initiative, which have had some launches but are continuing to be refined and expanded, particularly in the area of accessibility. The first ever National Tourism Ability Summit was just held on the West Coast, and the reason Sarah isn't with us in person is she's still fighting jet lag from getting back, I think, on Friday. So we allowed her to join us via phone. Also, after being out of the office for a week, she was eager to get back to those email and, get back to work. But Sarah, perhaps you want to just spend a moment letting us know about the summit. If you're unmuted.
You're unmuted.
Why don't we unmute it? Just...
Can you hear me?
Yep, there you are. Are you there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Yes, so I was in San Francisco last week. It was the first ever accessible travel summit in the country, basically focusing on looking at the challenges and potential solutions to accessible travel in the United States. There were representatives from DMOs and CVBs from across the country, including some reps from Arizona, Oregon, California, Michigan, and Florida. For New York State, we were there representing New York State along with Dutchess County and New York City and Company. Mary Kay Verba from Dutchess actually presented on their accessible tourism program that's called Think Differently. And New York City and Company's Makiko Matsuda Healy presented on their work to make New York City and the 5 boroughs more accessible. Open Doors Organization, which is the organization that we at I Love New York are currently working with on our accessible tourism program, they also presented and they shouted out our project, which they stated is one of the most comprehensive approaches in the country so far to address all types of accessibility. The first day included a launch pad of sorts of accessibility innovators. They presented their technology solutions to summit attendees. It was similar to a Shark Tank situation, but it was super helpful to a lot of the DMOs and travel agents that were in attendance because some of the companies actually have really interesting solutions to make destinations more accessible, including a company that's called Aria, and they can address the overwhelming amount of website accessibility issues that are really facing the New York State travel industry right now. Other attendees to the summit included presentations from Airbnb, Walt Disney, Royal Caribbean Cruises, the National Park Service, and leading accessibility travel influencers and travel agents that highlighted topics such as making nature more accessible, how to respond to lawyer-driven lawsuits, autism-certified programs, and beyond compliance, the future of accessibility and hospitality. I'd say one of the biggest takeaways from the summit were there are a lot of states and cities and major tourism industry stakeholders that understand the value of making destinations more accessible, and sharing a lot of the great work that's being done is really paving the way to more ideas and more ways to make accessibility travel more common across the country. Another big takeaway was just how needed training and awareness is really just needed in the travel industry right now. Accessibility definitely isn't a one-size-fits-all topic. There's a lot of nuance and a number of challenges that need to be considered, but I think the beauty of living in this tech-driven world that we live in today is there's a lot of solutions too. So, I mean, I definitely learned a lot, and I'm looking forward to using that information just to strengthen the program that we're currently working on.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, the timing is great because we are about to be entering our assessment period, where we look back on everything we've done over the last year and see how it did at I Love New York, and our planning, of course, to get ready so that once hopefully a new budget is passed on April 1st, we have a plan together, ready to go with a budget behind it. So the timing is great, that this will allow us as we go into our planning phase for the upcoming year to have even more information on what's happening nationally and the trends in the accessibility area. So we're very thrilled that Sarah was able to go and do that. That concludes the I Love New York team report. And if anybody has any questions, comments, additions, happy to entertain those.
Any questions? Mara, you look like you have a question.
No, I just wanted, I think when we move on to trends,
Okay.
I wanted to just make a couple, yeah.
All right, thank you, Ross. So at this meeting, if you noticed, we don't have a guest speaker today because we wanted to take the time for planning. And Ross and I thought it would be very important to hear back from the Tourism Advisory Council members and others on some of the trends that you may be noticing. Many of you travel around the country, travel around the world. So we wanted to really tap into your your intelligence, your experience, your capital, and bring it in here so that we can learn from it. If there are industry programs that you think are really doing well, that are moving the needle for other states, we'd like to know about them. If there are industry trends that are doing that, we'd like to know about that. And then also what industry obstacles are there that really are, challenging to us and New York State Division of Tourism on how, we can assist cope with that. And I think the accessibility that you mentioned, that alone, I can remember like 3 or 4 years ago, Anna, we were having conversations about that, and, I think things are moving in the right direction, and New York State is leading the way on that, but obviously we could always do more. So I think we'll open it up and see if anybody has, noticed any trends.
If we want to start with the people that.
Yes, some people provided provided input ahead of time.
Right.
So I think we're going to start by going over those.
Do you have anything?
I do. You want me to
Go
do
ahead.
that? Or?
Yeah.
Okay, great. We'll start with TAC member Dan Fuller. Dan, I think you're on the phone though, aren't you? If you're on the phone, you can do it yourself. I don't have to read your notes.
Okay, Ross,
Yes.
Dan Fuller.
Yes, go ahead, Dan.
Okay, great. The first, I think you talked about industry programs and so forth, and one of the things that I was in Finland recently, and obviously they have a very, very strong culture of fitness, which incorporates everything they do outdoors, and this is more from an infrastructure standpoint. But what was very noticeable was, actually the paths or the roadways that they create, that some are parallel to the roads, but some are completely independent, which go on for miles and miles and miles. And they use pedestrian bridges when crossing the roads, and it was interesting that they were used from hikers to runners to people that were biking to rollerblading and roller skiing and very many different things. And it's kind of like what Stowe has done with the path, but on a much larger scale. So I thought that was kind of an interesting concept. And I don't know, it's probably more prevalent in in more urban areas and maybe upstate New York, but I thought it was pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, and Dan, if I can just add in on that, it's interesting because that topic is also coming up around the Empire State Trail and also the Reimagine the Canals Task Force. There's lots of talks about how is that trail going to be maximized? Does there even need to be new infrastructure of taking people over the canal more? So that's good to hear that other countries are doing that, and it's good for us to be aware of as well.
Dan, were these paths put in specifically for pedestrians and bikers, or was it sort of a refurbishment of railroad trails or tracks the way we're seeing in New York?
Looked like they were built specifically for them. They were all, they're all paved, so they're all asphalt tracks. They weren't, like a soft material, but it looked like they were done specifically for them.
Okay.
Great.
The only other thing is maybe it was a much older roadway or something that was, was present at that time.
Right.
Great.
Thank you. And what about Copenhagen? He's got.
Copenhagen, this was passed on to me, and I guess they're doing some things where they're including a lot of the storytelling and use of technology to greet their visitors, and it's done in a very personalized way at several different entry points to the country. And I'm not as familiar with this as this was passed on to me, somebody else that was discussing it, but might be something to look into.
Great. You could keep going. I know you had industry trends and obstacles.
Yeah, industry trends. Obviously, Salt Lake City seems to be doing a lot right now, with their park system that they have. Travel Oregon seems to be very much on top of things. And one of the trends that, that seems, and maybe not necessarily for us, but it seems like the DNA trips, the solo travel, micro trips, and kind of underground super clubs seem to be, or supper clubs seem to be arising in there. And the last thing I had was really, obstacles, and it seems like sometimes we're kind of grappling a little bit with Uber and Airbnb and so forth, the conflict with them and hotels, and Uber with some of the other transportation systems. I kind of put this as I guess more of a tongue-in-cheek thing, is certainly for summer tourism, if we could ever change the school calendar, it would be phenomenal, but that's probably not going to happen.
Yeah,
I noticed.
But no, seriously, you look at the last 2 weeks in August, awful difficult to get staff. Everybody's gone to school, so really the summer season has been shortened quite a bit over the years.
Yeah, I know there's been obviously talk, I think it's been brought up at prior meetings, that there had been some legislative talks about starting the school year earlier. And I know that the industry reacted very strongly to that proposition. And I don't think it got any traction in Albany, partially for
Yeah.
that reason.
Yeah, the summer camps, they came together and formed a very strong alliance, and they fought that very hard. You know, because they wanted, if you look at what the trend is in the South, they start now around August 15th. And they get out usually May 15th or so. So they still have the 2 months of summer or of break, but they've shifted it. But when they tried to introduce that to New York, for now, it's been pushed back.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dan.
So that really concludes what my thoughts were.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I know Ali Sirota also sent in some notes ahead of time. Ali, are you still on the phone? If not,
Everybody's unmuted.
yeah. So Ali, if you're not there, I'll read your comments. Not hearing yet.
No, I am here. Can you hear me now?
I can. Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't realize everybody was unmuted, so I tried to unmute myself. And anyway,
Yep.
So I just noticed a couple things. Often I see the Visit California commercials, and they do a really great job of showcasing absolutely everything the state has to offer. And they're really good at leveraging the star power, which unfortunately, when it comes to a lot of middle America, is a big draw. And I feel like we could do a little bit better in leveraging the star power that New York State has. So that was one thing. Also, I noticed that California often promotes road trips exploring the state. I know that we highlighted that a little bit. I believe it was this summer, but there's so much that New York State has to offer by way of car. And I feel like in the summer, that's a really great way for a family to take a more reasonably priced vacation. So I think it would be worth showcasing that a little bit more. Another thing that I noticed was southern states often promote the music scene. And there's so much that New York has to offer by way of music. And I know that when it comes to pushing parts of the state, we often try to push outside of New York City a little bit, because that's where that's what New York State's known for the most part. However, I feel like a lot of people don't know about the music scene on a smaller level in New York City, and I feel like for the people who really follow musicians and travel for great music, not on the scale of Madison Square Garden, Barclays Center, or MetLife, it would be worth promoting places like the Bitter End, Birdland, Blue Note, Arlene's Grocery that have been around for years, and some of the best musicians have come out of there. And then Louisiana does a great job with interspersing their Instagram posts with more than just location photos. I love the I Love New York Instagram, but I feel like we could do a little bit more as far as putting people into it. And food, because New York has great food, and I feel like we don't highlight our cuisine enough. And then the last thing I was saying was, I know that planning trips is always a pain, and I recently heard about an app called DM Life that could help people visiting the state to plan and organize their trip in a simple app on their phone. And I'm happy to talk about that at a later date in more detail if anybody wants to hear about it.
Allie, what's the name of the app again?
It's DM Life.
It's called DM Life, DIEMLIFE.
Thank you.
Like
DIEM
Thank you.
LIFE.
Do you know
DM
about it?
Life.
No, like Carpe Diem.
Got it.
Carpe diem.
Sorry.
Seize
Yeah, you-
Exactly.
your life.
DM family.
Yeah, thank you, Ali. That's very helpful. I mean, I know in terms of road trips, it is something we've talked about, but a good point, are we doing as much as we can? For example, in international, we were just talking a lot about the idea of actually taking a train to a car, the idea of taking a train out of New York City to Dutchess or Albany and renting your car there and then going out to the state, which helps avoid driving out of the city, which is a challenge for even the most seasoned New Yorker, much less people who don't know the state very well. So I think that's a really good point.
Right.
And for us, it's frankly vital. I mean, we don't have, we have train that could get people to a location, but not as many. You're eventually going to have to get in a car, most likely, to see the majority of the state. And I also want to mention on the music, too. I think the point you're drawing is excellent, not just in terms of New York City, but beyond. That we have small music scenes across the state. Bob Dylan made his name, from what I'm told, at one of the oldest folk venues in the nation, which is in Saratoga. Lena's, is that? Cafe Lena. Cafe Lena. Which is known in the folk world.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, which is known in the folk world internationally. The Colored Musicians Club you heard about in Buffalo has a museum and a performance space. So yeah, I think the idea of music scenes, both in the city and beyond the state, is definitely something to look at maximizing.
I was wondering, Ross, on the train to the car point, I was amazed at how easy it is to rent a car in Albany, the Enterprise. I mean, they just do everything so seamlessly, but I don't think that's the expectation of when someone thinks about renting a car. And I'm just wondering whether it's worth trying to figure out I don't know, whether who's at the train stations now and whether even Zipcar, the smaller car, the more short-term car places we may be able to partner with in some way so that people know if they arrive at one of those places, it's going to be
we did
a positive experience.
About 2 years ago, I think. We had an initiative that Sarah worked on, in fact, that we had conversations with Zipcar and others, and we're actually successful about getting Zipcar added to some stations.
Mm-hmm.
I won't say that initiative went as far as it could have in terms of talking to folks about advertising around that and some other things, so I do think there's some further conversations to be had, for sure.
And I will say, Tom Martinelli, if you're still on the line, he has an excellent newsletter that goes out that is Amtrak-based. Well, Tom, I'll let you just describe it.
Okay, thank you. So we work with Enterprise for the Amtrak stations, which are don't overlap with Metro north of Poughkeepsie. And Albany is the only on-site Amtrak or Enterprise in New York State. So that one works really well because it's like an airport model. You can get off the train and you can get a car and you can be on your way very quickly. The cars are waiting outside. There is some limited service at the Hudson train station where you can drop your car off at the station. But those are the only two that have some sort of an on-site. We've worked with Enterprise to try to expand their service. I know they're looking at some other stations. But the Albany one works well, and it's one that, rather than staying on the train, a lot of times it's easier to, like, for instance, if you're going to Saratoga, a lot of people will go to Albany, rent a car, and, say, go to the racetrack because there's more frequency of trains going through Albany than staying on. So, we do promote that on the NewYorkByRail.com site, and, it is a very, the service is growing. Their numbers have been increasing every year. A lot of people are discovering it, and, the more that I Love New York can promote it, I think more people would take advantage of it.
Are the Zip cars at at different stations now? There are
some, yeah.
There are some.
They provide pickup, but Albany's the only one that has an on-site. Otherwise, they do provide pickup at every station, but you have to call and arrange, and they will meet you at the station with a car.
That's Enterprise, and
It's Enterprise, but like with the
there are
Zip-
some
Enterprise.
stations that have Zipcar, although we have
Zipcar has a partnership with Metro North.
Yeah.
I see.
So there are some.
Right.
But not with Amtrak.
right, and Zipcar tends to be much more for day trips than overnights.
Yeah.
Is what we're finding.
Yeah, because of the pricing.
Yeah,
structure.
on those same lines, that's what I was going to bring up, was public transportation, because there is none. So say you wanted to go skiing for the day, and you're not necessarily going to want to meet the buses. So you want to go to Bel Air, for instance, right? You want to take a train, you can't do it. If you want to take a bus, there are buses, but if you don't make that actual bus, or if you just want to go to Woodstock for the day, for instance, you have to take a bus to Kingston, then you have to switch. No real direct service. But if there was, if you could get a rent-a-car at Rhinebeck, or a zip car at Rhinebeck, at Rhinecliff, I mean, it would make so much sense. But even if it could be seasonal, at certain peak seasons, at peak times of the year, and trying to figure something like that out it could be really great, especially during peak ski weekends. Ski, ride the trains to the car to the
Ride and drive.
Yeah.
Just quickly on the car thing, I was at North White Plains Station in the Hertz, that's right across. I never go to North White Plains, I live in Westchester, but it's right across the street from it, and North White Plains is a very comfortable, not daunting station, and then the Hertz right across the street. So I don't know to what extent that's been mentioned by folks, but it's a really...
We have the most enterprises, really, in Westchester County along all the train lines as well, including Hertz. And Hertz is another one of our car companies. But it's a great idea of maybe just that connectivity at the trains or at the different ports of entry, what car services are nearby is a place to start.
Yep. I will say we have a how to get there page on the I Love New York website, which was kind of the offshoot of some of this work we did a couple years ago. I think to the point we're talking about, are we drawing enough attention to that? Are we doing all we can to make sure, at the very least, people are aware of what's there, never mind what can be added and improved?
Yeah, and to add to what Ross is saying, whenever we do a location-focused piece like our 48-hour season, we include at the end of that piece how to get there by car, by train, by plane, etc.
I sense someone on the phone is trying to...
I also just just wanted to add one thing to what Ross said, because I've been at other, and I know that there was some discussion about other states, and in California, by way of an example, the California Department of Transportation takes this initiative of trying to work on connectivity from the train stations with all the different options. So perhaps I Love New York could nudge New York State DOT, other state DOTs take this initiative, and perhaps I Love New York could nudge them and work with them to explore these options that other states are already doing. They see the value of it, and they're taking the lead.
Great. Great. I know Catherine Nichols and Mara Manis, who's with us today, had some thoughts from the arts perspective.
Great, thank you so much. Before I move on or carry on with the PATH conversation, because I'm going to launch into that, I just wanted to make two announcements. One is that this Friday there's going to be groundbreaking at the Albright Knox Museum in Buffalo. It's a greater than $100 million expansion. It's Rem Koolhaus, and it's I believe, I'm married to an architect, so I'm a little biased, but I believe it's going to be a real game changer for the region, because if you've seen the rendering of the addition, it's so modern, it's glassy, it looks really futuristic, and I think it's going to be a giant ad for a really well-known museum. They're actually rebranding their name, so they're going to be called the Buffalo AKG Museum, and which is really helpful. Their collection travels all around the world, and when people see Albright Knox on a painting, where is that? So that I think is going to be also part of a really great upside for everyone. That's going to be done in about a couple of years. That's their projected timeline, and I believe there's going to be representation from on high, although we don't have confirmation. It's really not my event. On Friday. So, and then the other thing that New York State Council of Arts has been working with, and Anna was at the beginning of this, is a joint feed between arts and tourism. So we fund about 2,300 organizations around the state. Not all of those are destinations, but a number of them are. And the ones that are will be able to post their events on our site, and that's going to be and have an interface with I Love New York on the app. And so thank you to everyone at I Love New York for making this happen. And we just went live, I think, on Friday. I'm not sure that it's populated to the extent that we want it right the second, but hopefully by the end of the week it will be. So I'm very excited about that. Just following on the conversations that's already taken place around the trails, at the interagency task force, we were able to provide the parks, which is developing a new website for the Empire State Trail, about 88 organizations, cultural destinations that are within a mile of the trail. And so we think that that's, back to how do we make the trail a driver of increased tourism. We're excited about that. We're excited about the opportunities that exist in partnering with the current trails in terms of wine and food. And I talked to agriculture about getting a lead on the licensing of those and when they're happening, and so that we can alert our grantees about that. Something that came up in our research is that there's a really interesting bespoke travel experience that Tourism Australia is offering, which partners partners with the country's most famous cultural attractions to lure high-value travelers on private tours and bespoke experiences at these cultural destinations. So creating unique experiences around New York State's world-renowned cultural attractions would be attractive for those looking for those once-in-a-lifetime kind of opportunities, and we're very open to partnering with you guys if that's of interest on developing those. I'm sure on the organization side there would be interest in doing that. So, and Catherine, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Mara. And just one other thought on that bespoke travel experience. It really brought to mind some of the work that Anna was doing last year with social influencers and their sort of unique experiences. And that's always a great way to, generate a lot of impression on social media. So we thought that was, would be a nice way to combine high value tourism and these bespoke experiences with a great social media effort. In the area of obstacles, but an obstacle also equals an opportunity, one of the things that we face at NYSCA is, well, not face, but one of the opportunities is that cultural tourism is a huge driver of the economy, but New York State is lacking in state-level arts and cultural tourism data. So there's an opportunity. We have regional data and also very good New York City figures, but it would be really helpful to understand more clearly how our cultural organizations build our tourism industry and how we can better support them, grow their influence, create cross-sector collaborations, packaging, integrating food, wine, nature, the arts, that sort of thing. So we know there are major cultural destinations all across the state in almost every region, and these are often primary reasons for tourists visiting those cities. So thinking again of Buffalo, we've mentioned a number of times today, but also Corning, Cooperstown, Rochester, and others. And we know that cultural tourists typically spend more and stay longer than other tourists. So thanks to an introduction from Ross, NYSCA is working now with Bob Myron, who's research director for I Love New York. And the really good news that makes this challenge an opportunity is that he'll be including arts and culture in the upcoming statewide tourism research. And that will really help us better understand the sector and work with our partners across the state really to take advantage of these opportunities, to draw travelers to all regions of New York. And the timing for this, for completion of it, would be as early as summer 2020. So that's some really good news, with NYSCA working together with tourism. So we really appreciate it, and we look forward to some analysis of that data, because being a grant-making organization, NYSCA really relies heavily on metrics and data, and this will be really terrific for us. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Oh, can I just for a second? Greg Marshall at Visit Rochester. It strikes me that the comment that was made relative to the diversity conference and the accessibility program is where our industry needs to be really focused in terms of the future. It is both of them. If you had attended either of those conferences, I think you would be inspired and motivated. And the fact of the matter is, I do hope you take a strong look at really incorporating both of those, because the diversity initiative, just for me personally, I know as much as I see how much better a job the tourism industry can do there. So I encourage you to do that. The one thing I wanted to just mention and maybe get onto the radar is the whole concept, and of course I go back a little ways, but the whole concept of hospitality training. Not just hospitality training to get people to be friendly to visitors. That goes without saying, but to be honest with you, in this age of shared economy, Airbnb, Uber, Lyft, etc., there really aren't a lot of touch points with those individual hosts, etc., because they're off on their own, in terms of explaining to them the value of tourism and the value of saying stay longer, bring friends and family. And then lastly, I hope you would consider this mega trend that's happening around the world with the combination of business travel and leisure. And the catchphrase is bleisure, but we're working on it a little bit in Rochester. I hope to do some things on that in the future as well. But the concept of business travel being tied to some leisure activities, bring the friends, bring the family, stay a little bit extra longer. And the fact of the matter is, what a great opportunity to tie in the state's initiatives with the various TPAs that are working in the business arena, or the meetings and conventions arena, or the trade show arenas, because the fact of the matter is it's kind of a simple one. So those are my comments, and I hope I have 30 seconds later to say one more thing.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, and I'll mention, actually, coming back from the UK, because I haven't heard it mentioned yet, the idea of sustainable tourism. I was struck in the UK with what a mainstream topic that is, to the point of there are a number of people, publications, including a major daily in London, that are questioning whether people should do air travel, and the idea of the economic impact of that and whether we should be covering that or not. Literally, while I was there for WTM, to show you how big WTM is, the BBC was having a story on tourism that morning on the news, and had a gentleman who I believe was the head of the UK Tourism Association, and that's, I would say, 2/3 of the interview was about this, and literally asked him, it's like, well, don't you think part of the problem is airfares are too low? Isn't that the problem? And his response was, I don't think most Britons would actually say the fares are too low. They'd probably say it was too high. But it was certainly fascinating, and I think something we're going to have to take a look at, particularly internationally, but I think even domestically, and thinking about, and I think New York has a really interesting story to tell, and Kelly and I have just started working on this project of telling the story of actually New York State's national historic role in conservation. That we have Forever Wild written into our Constitution to protect places like the Adirondacks and the Catskills, and so that one can do, that even if one is conscious about these things, that you can do responsible tourism, even getting on that plane, by being a part of what happens when you get to where you're going. So I think it's an interesting trend we're going to have to look at.
Can I add to that, Ross? So recently I read an article in Condé Nast Traveler about sustainable tourism and this particular generation, which I think is Gen Z's, interest in sustainable travel. So I just want to read a quick quote that I had sent out internally to staff. It says, with Generation Z forecast to make up 40% of consumer spending by 2020, travel brands responding in good faith to the shift in attitudes are already seeing results. After launching 80 sustainability-minded packages at the end of the last year, Intrepid Travel has seen growth amongst 18 to 29-year-old audience, which includes young millennials and older Gen Zers, increased by 100% compared to 15% growth across the company. So if anybody's interested in the article, I can have Kelly send it out.
So it's, I think, another trend for us to be aware of.
So while we're sharing our international experience, I actually recently came back from Japan, so this is my first full day in the office where I'm not jet lagged. So One of the things that really struck me was their transportation system, and I think it's been widely reported on, but both from just existing and being convenient for everyone and accessibility, it's one of the only places I've ever been where I did not have one hiccup, not like one minor obstacle in 2 weeks there. And one of the things I did, so this was not just in Tokyo, which is a huge city, but I took a day trip to a mountain town, much like the Catskills, about an hour and a half outside of Tokyo. And what really struck me was how seamless the handoff was from taking the train from the city and then getting on local transportation and seeing bus stops every 2 blocks in the middle of nowhere. And making it just like the way they make it very easy, and all of these separate transportation systems working together to ensure that the end-to-end, the end tourism experience, that you can get to those museums that are further afield, and you can get to various destinations very easily.
Where'd you go?
I went to Hakone, I went to Kyoto, I went to like some small towns around Kyoto. Oh, and also they have velvet seats on their subway, and they're clean, and the elevators don't smell. So.
Oh, please. They vacuum every square inch of their subway stations. I mean, it's just, they can't, the experience is like shocking.
So it's proof that you can have nice things.
Ross, just 2 things. We're still talking in person to about 10,000 travelers every season. And one of the things I'm still fascinated about is how giant of a hook the volume of our craft beverage industry is. And what I mean by that is in Boston, we'll be talking to people, or Philly, and we'll say there are over 200 wineries in the Finger Lakes alone, and it shocks them. When people hear that there are hundreds of breweries, it immediately begins a conversation about a craft beverage pilgrimage. So we do face a lot of that just wasn't quite aware of what Upstate had, but the hook of craft beverages is one of the most powerful things we talk to people about. And then I just wanted to dovetail on the sustainable travel piece. There was a presenter at Destinations International, the previous marketing director from Copenhagen, who brought up a brilliant point, which is that the constant chatter about over-tourism needs to be managed into a conversation about micro over-tourism. And in the way that she said that, we could look at like the Adirondacks. There's been a few articles about, are there too many hikers in the Adirondacks? Clearly not, but there might be 3 trails that are having a trouble.
That's right.
And that we have to get ahead of that, where some of these destinations are saying we're having over-tourism. The restaurants aren't complaining, the hotels aren't complaining, there are 1 or 2 touch points that are having the trouble. And that we have to kind of get ahead of that messaging, so.
Interesting.
Ronnie, did you have something to add?
Just quickly, in terms of diversity and accessibility and all of that, and the generational differences, I think just being aware of the fact that I think on the surface initially, when you're thinking about that, it's about how do we get this group to come? How do we get people who have accessibility issues? How do we get people of other races, etc.? But with the generational differences, there's more awareness of a broader group of people who just want to see that overall, and who are not a sustainability travel and they're not necessarily a person of color or somebody in a wheelchair, but they're not going to want to go to a destination if they see that everybody in an ad is all white and able-bodied. So just I think being aware that there's a maturity to the discussion of going beyond just targeting new groups, just being aware of the generational differences and the need that you just need to be doing it for all of that generation, not just the specific groups.
Always good to keep that in mind. Any other trends, or Ray, you said you wanted an extra 30 seconds.
That may be for new business,
Under
I
new
think.
business,
yeah. Okay, okay.
So anything else on our questions? This, I think, was very helpful and very useful.
Yep.
So I do think,
Just mobile communication.
Yep.
It's something that's come up a lot of times,
Yep.
especially on the roads in between places.
In the Adirondacks and in the Catskills in
Yeah.
particular.
Yeah. For a lot of people are not comfortable driving long distances where they don't have access to cell service because they're afraid of what happens if they break down. Long stretches where you don't see a lot of cars. Again, taking it to public safety rather than necessarily tourism.
Right.
I just wanted to mention something. A trend I'm reading a lot about is genealogy and roots travel, ancestry travel, and it's more than just looking all the way to Europe and your past ancestors there, but really focusing on U.S. roots. And a few states like South Carolina, Indiana, and Utah have really embraced this. There are tour operators out there who are offering ancestry packages where they're bringing you to vital record centers. They're even including DNA kits within your package. There's a big growth in these DNA kits, and it's just all something that we could look at with Ellis Island and all the great historical societies we have throughout the state.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, we see that internationally, that very often. Well, we'll talk to other countries about coming to New York to learn about your Dutch heritage, right? Which is ironic that you would come to another country. But we have had some success in talking to folks internationally about that. But so it's interesting, the idea of doing that domestically as well.
I wasn't necessarily going to bring this up, but one thing that came up at our summit that I was very surprised to hear in the specific was that there are destinations and universities and an assortment of things in upstate New York who tell people not to go certain ways when they're coming to their colleges. So the reason I'm bringing it up, as a state institution that has engagement with the state police, that was one of the things that was explicitly mentioned at our event, that there is a feeling of harassment of people who are on the way up to some of those destinations. So I know that this is not an easy discussion. I know that it's not an easy solution, but it's one thing for anecdotally an individual to say they're doing this. To me, it's another thing when somebody like SUNY Potsdam is literally telling people not to go certain directions. That's not good for anybody. So just to say that was something that came up at our event, that there are institutions that are legitimately telling people don't go this way because we are concerned, that the state police might stop you and target you as a person of color.
Okay.
So, only because I feel like it fits three. Yes.
Great. Well, thank you again, everyone. This is doesn't have to be a one-time thing by any means. We love hearing input all the time.
And this is what the TAC is supposed to do, is really to be out there and get your ideas and share them with us, because it's an advisory council. So appreciate it. New business.
I only asked for 30 seconds. This is about the state staff, but it ends up being about me as well. For those of you who don't know, I'm leaving my position to visit Rochester for new ventures after 41 years. That's a lot of time. I would venture to say I'm one of the few people in the room here that remembers the initiative that was called I Love New York and whether it was a good idea or not. And I have lived through an incredible number of state tourism leaders. I have lived through a lot of state staff. There is no question, and you've heard me say this before, at least some of you have, that the current staff level of dedication, competence, and productivity is the highest as I have ever seen it in 4 decades. And that speaks well to all of you. Thank you for letting me be a part of that. You will see me around. Arts and culture is one of those areas, and the roads that tell America's story, the scenic byways, is also one of the areas I'll be involved in. But I did want to say that. So thank you. It is an honor and a pleasure to work with all of you, and I hope some of our paths will cross again.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you. I also wanted to mention that I'm looking forward to joining Nistia in 2 weeks.
Yes. 2 weeks already. Wow, December is going to be in 2
December
weeks.
4th and 5th.
December 4th and 5th. We are having a strategic planning meeting, and thank you both, Ross and Christine, will be there in attendance. And the goal is really to get advisement and some ideas on, again, how we can be a better organization and serve the industry so we can all work together.
Well, and thank you for having it at the TWA Hotel.
Yes,
And the conference center.
Yes.
I'm very curious about that. Been to one event there, but, it's certainly a reason to get to the airport early.
Right.
When you fly
No
in.
problems, Ralph, right? Guaranteed.
Okay.
And and I think it's a really exciting time, I think, for Nistia with a fairly new, I guess a year old now, new executive director, or president, CEO, I can't remember Bob Provost's title. And also interesting things happening at NISTA and the DMO Association with them collaborating. So I think it's actually a really good time for the trade groups and Misty in particular to be taking a look at roles and what folks do and how it all fits together. So we're excited to be a part of that.
Thank you. So more to come on.
And another thing in terms of, sorry, state money, Adirondack Diversity Initiative just hired their first diversity director, so I don't know if that was gonna be addressed at all today. So yeah, that's from state funding, so it's in the Adirondack News. It's, as of last week, they have their first diversity director to deal with
What's the name?
these matters. Her name is Nicole Hilton Patterson,
Okay.
with a Y, Hilton with a Y.
All right. So, without further ado, thank you all, and I want to let you know that our next meeting is going to be on a Wednesday, January 8th, unless we can change that one, right? Okay, so to be continued on that, we will let you know by email.
What we'll do is follow up with a confirmed list of meeting dates. There may be some we can change or maybe not, but we'll send out a confirmed list in the next probably week or two, certainly before the holidays.
All right, so meeting is adjourned at 12:34 p.m. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
So I guess we're not going to see each other until next year.
That's right.
No matter what day it is.
That's for sure.
See you next year. Happy New Year.